If you've ever been on the internet, chances are you've seen a post that goes something like this. Netflix fans left too scared to sleep and scarred for life by new horror film. Every time I see a headline like this, I like to smugly think to myself,
I would be totally fine if I watched that movie.
but do you know how many I've actually gone on to watch? Zero. So I decided it's time to finally test the truth behind these headlines. And I can only think of one logical way to do that. I'm gonna spend an entire day watching back-to-back horror movies that have claims just like these, with the sole purpose of trying to stack up as much mental trauma as I possibly can. This is the Netflix horror trauma test. Let's actually go through and find 3 movies with articles claiming permanent psychological damage or scarred for life or something. First one that I found was some film called The Strays. And if you type in Google, The Strays scarred for life, look how many different articles are claiming this. Netflix users proclaim they are scarred for life after watching The Strays. That is exactly what we're looking for. We're choosing The Strays. That's the first one. The second one that I was able to find was this movie called Hellhole. So Netflix viewers left scarred by creepy horror film for weeks after watching it. Scarred for weeks, and that's in quotations, which means somebody said it. So that's the second one that we are choosing to watch. The third one that I found is called The Lodge, and this is actually, out of all the ones that I've chosen, apparently this one got the best ratings. Warning over Netflix horror film that terrified viewers are turning off after 10 minutes. So basically, if I can get past the 10-minute mark, that would be impressive. So this is the third one we're gonna watch. By the end of this, I'm gonna need some way to quantify the amount of mental trauma that I'm stacking onto itself by the end. So in general, I feel like my mental health on a scale of 1 to 10 is like a 9. I feel like I'm doing pretty good right now. Hopefully there'll be some sort of difference with the before and after. Let's do this. It's gonna be, right now it's 3:18 p.m. By the end of this challenge, it should be after 8. Like it should be like 8:30. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so we just finished the movie The Strays, and I would say the thing that scarred me the most was there was a couple of moments that were pretty cringy. Okay, this is future me interrupting. I don't know why I decided to pull my punches here, but this movie was a fucking cringe fest. There are some scenes in this movie that make Tommy Wiseau in The Room look like an Oscar-winning masterpiece. The Strays is basically a movie where there's this lady named Neve, and she's very uptight. Everything's gonna be perfect. She starts going, what makes the viewer seem like she starts going a little bit crazy. It's almost as if she's hallucinating these people that are coming into existence. Like it seems like people are haunting her or something, but it turns out that the people that are haunting her turn out to be real, and it turns out that they are actually deliberately coming back as her children that she deserted. Back when they were 8 or 5 or something, she just like deserted them because she didn't like her husband, and so she just kind of left them with their aunt. This is how her ex-children were able to manipulate her current children. The movie presumably paints the picture that the current children somehow have like no friend group or no friends or no social life. Like just literally, actually, I'm not even exaggerating, by a couple of sentences, the ex-children are able to gain the trust of the current children and like instantaneously. So it's as if not a single person has ever talked to them in their life, which is ridiculous. Her ex-son, he stands up for some like very minor, like some, honestly, like in retrospect, some pretty minor bullying, and instantly becomes the friend of her current son, which is Sebastian. Sebas is what I think they called him. He instantly becomes friends and immediately trusts, and like they're like hanging out all of a sudden immediately, right? And he's the janitor of the school. So somehow the janitor of the school won his trust, and now he's his like best friend. The girl, her current daughter, Mary, ex-daughter was Dion, was able to win over Mary, was by complimenting her hair, like by stalking her in a parking lot, complimenting her hair, and now they're best friends. Like she turns around, she's like, can I help you? And she compliments her hair, and now they're best friends. And not only they're best friends, she gets dropped off by her mom and goes, just implicitly trusts this ex-daughter Dion, who she didn't know was the ex-daughter at the time, but she goes to her hotel room. So like you would think that they'd be thinking, oh, do you live in a hotel room? Like, what's that all about? You know, but they don't, it's just like, oh, cool. You live in a hotel room. Yeah, let's order some room service. Okay. Anyway, apparently the parents have no presence in their kids' lives. Like they don't go to their son's basketball game. They're not really invested in their kids' lives. Like the mom is just a bad person in general. And the father is like, seems like a good guy. The director is painting him to be a good guy, but like, he's also not going to his son's basketball games or not really super invested in his daughter. Anyway, back to what I was actually saying. There's a basketball game where their parents are not at, and there's like 3 people total in the crowd. Neve's current son, he's like playing in the game and does like the slowest crossover I've ever seen in my life. Look at the defender. the background actor looks like he had never played basketball in his life. And then afterward, the ex-daughter and the current daughter are together in the hotel room. They order room service and like they're getting drunk and partying or whatever, right? The ex-daughter is like clearly having a mental breakdown. Like she said, like her smile just slowly starts to diminish, and she's just sitting there with a straight face, just staring at the current daughter. And it cuts to the current daughter, and she's like, whoa, she's like dancing around and like having a great time. Like I'm cringing right now thinking about it. But so the mom shows up to some diner with her ex-children. They're just like, hey, so what now? So here we are, we found you, what now? And the mom slides over a check for 20,000 pounds, and she's like, if you go back to London, hopefully this will help you get back on your feet. And she's basically trying to buy them off. And what a shocker, the kids are not too happy with that. So they show up in the middle of the night at her house. Like they say they're gonna go back to London, but they show up in the middle of the night, and they basically are, it's the Dion's birthday, her ex-daughter's birthday, and they're like trying to celebrate her birthday and like have a good time. Like the ex-children are trying to gaslight themselves into like having a normal childhood for a couple of minutes. You know what I mean? And it's just really awkward. Like they're trying to order Chinese, but the Chinese place is closed. They're trying to play Scrabble, but the brother just like, after like 2 words of laying down, the brother just like slaps the Scrabble board off the table, and he's like, I'm bored, let's do something else. Anyway, the ex-son, he takes the current husband into a weightlifting room, and like they're just getting swole and like having a great workout sesh, but they're doing bench press, and he puts on like a ton of weight, and the father's like really struggling, and he just basically doesn't help him. So you can imagine how it goes from there. They end up ordering Uber Eats instead of Chinese because the Chinese place was closed, and the Uber Eats guy shows up on a motorcycle. The mom's like, yeah, I'll be right back. Like, let me get you a tip. Thanks for bringing the food. She finds her wallet, and she's like, all right, I'm just gonna go tip this Uber Eats driver, and just takes off and leaves. The movie ends with her ex-children and her children staring at the door like, I cannot believe this woman just left. Like the ex-children thinking, I can't believe this woman just left us again. And her current children are thinking, I cannot believe our mother just left us with her ex-children who she left in the past in the first place. And the movie's done. Apparently, this is left viewers scarred for life. You know, on a scale of like 1 to scarred for life, I would say I'm probably pretty comfortable at a 1. I was gonna say maybe 2, but like I had a couple of good laughs, so I'm actually feeling pretty good right now. Just another quick mental health check-in. I would say before I was at a 9. I would say now, I would say I'm at a 10 now. Like I feel pretty good. This is, you know, I had a good time watching this. This first movie did a great job of lulling me into a false sense of security, but this next movie would definitely be raising the bar. Okay, so I just finished the Hellhole movie, and I gotta be honest, it wasn't that bad. It was actually pretty good. It was pretty entertaining, not necessarily from like a cringe aspect like the first one, or like, it was entertaining because like there's a couple of really good twists in there. So here's your spoiler warning. Click away if you actually want to watch the film. Basically what this movie is there is a father, right? A prior or a priest essentially that visits some monastery where people are going to get exorcised. So what we think we know in the beginning is that this father that has come to the monastery, that he is there to help them exorcise certain individuals or be there in the exorcism process to help. However, we find out that once the film quickly gets into like their first exorcism, and there's of course some demonic things happening. So the bed's shaking, the wind starts blowing, the cross, it's called something else though. It's got Jesus on it with a cross. It's called something, I just can't remember what it is. Crucifix. It was crucifix. Edit that in there. Put that wherever I said cross. He's holding that out and he's saying the exorcism prayer, let's say, and it starts on fire, and the lady that they're exorcising is like going crazy, and she's like freaking out and like screaming. And anyway, the father, right, the priest that is the main character that we think is there to help, he's like looking around at everybody. He's like, are you guys seeing this shit right now? Like all the monks or the priests or whatever they are, like they're standing there like deadpan stoic faces, and he's like looking around. He's like, what in the hell is going on right now? So like that's the first inkling of an idea you get to realize, like, hey, maybe this guy isn't who he says he is, right? Film goes on. One, I guess, foreshadowing aspect of the film is like all the monks or the priests, whatever they are, they eat in like a big cafeteria room where it's like a big square dining hall, let's say, right? And they're eating like this really gross looking stuff. You can tell the director does a good job like making you know that it tastes terrible, and there's like flies in it and stuff. And the one guy's like eating it, and it's like so bad that he's like gagging and stuff. Like the guy after this exorcism, he starts snooping around, and he finds the exorcism tape, and he's watching it, and he's like, something didn't feel right to him, right? He's like, it's almost like he didn't believe it, right? Which is weird because he's a priest there to help with exorcisms. Why doesn't he believe in it? Anyway, he goes snooping around to the same same exorcism layer, let's call it. And he finds that there's like these floorboards where if you step on them, it'll wiggle the bed. So if you move your weight back and forth, it'll wiggle the bed. So it's like, right? Then he finds this syringe underneath the bed too, that's broken and empty. Why are people getting injections? Why is this underneath the bed? Then he finds this lever that opens up some windows or whatever, or some vents that blows air. And then he finds the cross, right? It turns out there's a little button, you click the button and the cross will start on fire. So basically we come to the first twist of the film, which I actually thought was really cool. But the first twist of the film is that they fake the exorcism. Everyone there knows the exorcism is fake. The reason why I like this twist in particular, the reason why I was like, wow, this is really cool. You basically have the guys are supposed to be good guys, right? That you trust, that you're living amongst right now. Those guys are actually the enemies, right? So that's kind of an exciting twist. Like I certainly thought it was pretty cool. What happens is there's another priest. Another priest notices that this guy is snooping around and he pulls him into the confession chamber. Pulls him into the confession chamber and he's like, hey, listen, all the other priests, all the other monks, whatever they are there, they notice you're snooping around. You can't do that, right? He's like, I did the same thing. They punished me brutally and now I'm stuck here. I can't get out. So it's like, yes, we have a guy on our side. It's like, at least we're in this together with somebody. The guy hears this information and like the very next thing that he does is go outside. So like in the middle of everything and starts digging up bodies where they like apparently bury the people that pass away from the exorcisms, right? And he finds that there's no bodies in the coffins that they're burying. Surprise, surprise, he got captured in the middle of the entire monastery making a bunch of noise digging up bodies after he was told not to snoop around. What a shocker. He got a bag thrown over his head and he got captured. Anyway, he wakes up tied to his bed and at this point you basically can know that they're eating human flesh. And he wakes up with like 4 bowls of meat next to him and he's like tied up or whatever. And they just start like spoon feeding him. Yeah, like here comes the airplane. No, they don't do that, but they start like spoon feeding him humans and he finishes 4 bowls. And like at this point, I remember thinking like, why is it beneficial for him to eat humans? Are they trying to torture him or what is it? Turns out he frees himself. The guy that's watching over him, he kills. He's able to, like, he tussles with him a little bit and then he kills him. And he's kind of trying to find a way out or like at least get away from everybody. But he goes into this chamber that it contains some books or whatever, like a library of some sorts. The guy that went into the confession room with him that gave him the tips also shows up and he goes, listen, basically they think you're the chosen one. And the reason why they think you're the chosen one is because he has this sign right here. Like he had a sign right here in the beginning of the film. I forgot to mention this. It's like the scene is a baby that's about to get sacrificed that has a little symbol right there, right? If the chosen one is not killed as an infant, which is what was trying to be done in the beginning, then what can happen is once the chosen one grows up, you feed him like the blood of like 7 sinners or something. The ritual will complete and the chosen one will turn into a demon or something. So the guy's like, hey, that's what they think is happening. Let's get out of here. Let's go escape in these tunnels that are underneath the monastery that we can use to escape. And so at this point, I was happy that, our boy was there, our friend was there. But then as soon as he said, let's go through the tunnels, I'm like, something doesn't feel right here. You know what I mean? So lo and behold, they go through the tunnels, but he gets knocked out. And the guy that's like his friend at the time, whatever, he turns out he just like is standing there watching him get beat. So it's like, okay, he got betrayed. They bring him to this weird place and they put him up like in a T pose or whatever. And they basically feed him or, make him drink the blood of an innocent or a sinner. That wasn't really clear on that. They make him drink somebody's blood. Okay. Does it really matter if it's a sinner or an innocent person? I don't know. They complete the ritual. And once they complete the ritual, they all just stand there and look at him and he like nothing's happening. So they're like, they're like John Travolta looking around like, well, I guess we messed up here. I guess we really f***ed up here. They throw him down this well that apparently is a gateway to hell. And they're like, well, let's go to bed. And all of a sudden, bang, the guy that betrayed the main character, he starts T-posing and doing this thing. And like he has like flies coming out of his face. Anyway, he dies, right? And it turns out that the main character, he was the chosen one. And he comes out of the well as a demon and whatever. The ending is, you can see where it's going from here. All the other monks get frozen in time. They T-pose, they turn upside down. A hole opens in the sky. You can see where it's going from here. Something that's clearly a biblical story that I don't know about happens. And then it just ends there. Like, I think the movie would have been a lot better if it wasn't drawn out at the end. The movie honestly probably could have been ended like 25 minutes earlier with the same thing happening and like probably been a lot better. If I had to give my mental health check-in right now, I would say I'm back at a 9. Maybe an 8, because I just realized I have to watch one more film. And the next one, they couldn't even make it past 10 minutes. Little did I know though, this title was not clickbait. And The Lodge would be the most traumatizing film out of the 3 by far. Wow. Yeah, that one was a little rough. Wow. Jeez. It is not clickbait that people would turn this off after 10 minutes. I will tell you that right now. Okay. I'll be completely honest here. Okay. I went into this challenge with the expectation that I would just watch some like pretty mediocre horror films. To be honest, after the first one, I was like, yep, that's exactly what this challenge is going to be. After the second one, I was like, okay, maybe this can be pretty entertaining at the same time. This movie is the one that like it was hard to endure. Like it was difficult to watch. That's coming from somebody who does not watch horror movies, and I'm not accustomed to horror movies. With that into consideration, I will say if you want to watch this on your own, I recommend it because it's good. It's pretty good. The scene starts out with a creepy, ominous view of the lodge. Then it cuts to a mother who peeks in a dollhouse, which the dollhouse plays, I guess, an important role for people that are smarter than me. The mom, she's getting ready for something. She's calling her kids. She's getting ready for something, putting on makeup. All of a sudden just starts breaking down in tears, which caught me off guard. Like it just came out of nowhere. I was in a good mood, so I just started laughing. But in hindsight, it's actually really sad. She takes her two kids, which is Aaron and Mia. It becomes apparent really, really quick that the mother and the father are divorced, right? Because she's kind of dropping them off. They are just taking them to see her ex-husband, presumably, right? As she drops them off, the father's like, hey, come inside, let's talk. They end up having a conversation. The father says, hey, I'm going to marry this other woman, Grace. I think it's time for us to finalize the divorce. And the ex-wife just kind of like looks at the father and, just kind of, smiles and goes, okay, sounds good. And that's like the worst response you want to hear, right? Like convincingly fake happy response and then just like an immediate exit. The biological mom is clearly taking the divorce really, really hard. So that's about the first five minutes of the film. Shortly after that scene, there is a long shot with just a slow zoom, or there might not even be a zoom. It's just like a long still shot on the mom sitting at the dinner table, drinking a glass of wine, just sitting there. She's not saying anything. Nothing's happening. There's no music. It's just a still shot. I felt like it was just like a consistent still shot for like 60 seconds or more. And I felt like as soon as I got lulled into a sense of letting my defenses down, the mom grabs a gun and holy shit! To herself, okay? It was it was a boring scene, right? And then as soon as you were lulled into a sense of security, bang, that happened. And it was like, well, my reaction speaks for itself. Skips to 6 months later. So 6 months later in the film. Wow. Just that part alone was an emotional ride. The dad, he says that he's gonna marry this woman, Grace, right? And he still stands by that, apparently 6 months later. Sometimes there were some parts that were hard to buy in. This was one of the parts. This is the dad's thought process, okay? Eventually I'm gonna marry this woman, and I have been talking, we wanna go to the lodge. I'll take you guys there. And the son Aiden goes, I thought you worked. I thought you were working. Why are we talking about going to the lodge? And the dad goes, yes, I am working, but I figured I could drive you up December 20th or whatever, and then goes back to work, and then he'll drive back up on Christmas when he presumably has off, and he'll spend the rest of the time with him. There was an amount of days that would be spent alone with Grace. It's at this point that the son Aiden is like, Dad, she's a psychopath. What are you talking about? You're gonna marry this woman? She's a psychopath. So it's like at this moment, for the viewer, it's like, wait, what? Apparently the dad found it in his books that this woman, Grace, as a kid, was the only survivor left in some religious cult after a mass unaliving went on. And Grace was the only survivor as a child. Apparently that wasn't enough evidence for the dad, and he decides this woman who has been proven to be the only survivor left in a unaliving pact of a religious cult, the way that I'm going to fix this entire scenario is I'm going to force them to be alone in a house in the middle of nowhere in the middle of winter with blizzards going on every single day. And he pats himself on his back and he goes, Richard, you did good. This is how it's gonna happen. However, from that moment, they go to the lodge, and then when the kids, or I guess when the viewer finally meets Grace, like she sits in the car, the whole time we see the back of her head. We still have not seen her face, we have not heard her voice, and she turns around and it's like this really attractive woman, and she just goes,
Hey, hi Mia.
Like in just the softest voice ever. The director did a really good job of subverting expectations in some moments. The rest of the film is basically going to the lodge, and the dad eventually leaves, right? And now it's just Grace and the kids. We basically start to see Grace slowly slip into madness, her reason why she was part of that cult. And we basically see that like she has this medication that the father doesn't know about. And when she's on the medication, she has these weird lapses during the night. It's basically like sleepwalking, where she's sleepwalking, but she also thinks that scary things are happening, or like flashbacks of frightening things are happening. The kids notice this, right? Aiden Aiden notices this pretty quickly, says that she's walking around at night a lot. But what happens is Aiden and Mia take advantage of this. They want to play a prank on this woman that basically they're blaming for the death of their mom. So at night, when Grace is either sleeping or having one of these weird episodes or whatever, they hide all the food, they hide all the blankets, they hide the coat, they turn the power off, they hide her medication, they hide like everything. They basically do that because they're trying to convince Grace that like weird things are going on. And then eventually they try to convince her that they're dead, like that they're dead in purgatory waiting to go to heaven. And eventually they do convince her of that. After their long convincing session of the fact that like, hey, we're in purgatory, we can't escape it, we're already dead, Grace finally like snaps. After Grace snaps, like she's totally convinced that she's given up her soul to God at this point. Grace starts walking around with this gun. It's loaded and she's crazy and she thinks that everyone's dead. So just as she walks up in the attic where the children are hiding because they're so scared of the monster they created that they're hiding from her in the attic, Grace finds them and she starts walking towards them and cornering them. And she starts pointing the gun at the children, right? Now, the dad comes in the house and realizes things are wrong. There's a pretty obvious sign that something went wrong, and he starts going upstairs and he sees Grace looking like a maniac walking down the attic with his children behind her. So the dad sees this look on Grace and realizes, oh my God, wow, I can't believe there weren't any red flags beforehand to foresee this coming, right? That's what the dad is thinking. So Grace basically says, hey, we're all dead. We're stuck in purgatory. Let me prove it to you, right? Because that's what the children convinced her. How can I say this in YouTube language? She points the gun at herself and it's a blank. She pulls the trigger and it's a blank, right? So maybe it's not loaded. However, after everything the kids have been through, she wants to further prove it to her fiance, let's say, and points it at him, pulls the trigger, and it turns out it is loaded. And the kids have been through so much, and now they are going through this. They had to go through this now. The final scene is basically them sitting around a table. Oh my God. The final scene is actually kind of pretty rough. They all sit around in a circle while Grace still has the gun and sing religious hymns, basically. And it's rough. Like the kids are good actors. Like I'm really happy the challenge is done, but I'm also, that this movie was pretty intense. So yeah, that's my recap of this movie. I'd say overall mental health check-in after watching 5.5 consecutive hours of horror films. I feel pretty good. Definitely worse than when I started, but that's, again, like I said, that's all thanks to the last movie. Are these headlines accurate? That's the final question, right? I will say if you take just the statistics from this challenge that I did myself, I would say 1 in 3 movies that have headlines written about them probably have some truth to them, as I saw with the last movie. The last movie, I can definitely see how somebody would stop watching it 10 minutes into the movie. For the other 2 movies, scarred for weeks, scarred for life, no, not even close. But again, as everybody knows, nobody on the internet ever lies, ever. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope my suffering brought you some sort of joy. I'm very thankful I don't have to do this challenge again and that it's over. Yeah, thanks so much. See ya.